Among the sectors affected most severely by the pandemic are the performing arts. Some arts organizations have found ways to pivot and keep active with virtual performance, but the cutback in opportunities has been especially hard on freelance musicians, a pool of highly skilled artists sometimes brought on for specialized work. That's why some of these musicians decided last year to start the New England Musicians Relief Fund. To tell us about the effort are the fund's president, Gabriel Langfur, and Vice President Hazel Davis. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
having
us.
us, Chris.
I want to start with Gabe. This is a group of people. First of all, tell me about some of the organizations that these musicians play with.
Well, I can start with myself. I'm a trombone player. I freelance in Boston, often with the Boston Ballet. I have spent a lot of time at Symphony Hall playing as an extra or substitute with the Boston Symphony or Pops. I'm also a member of two other orchestras in New England, the Rhode Island Philharmonic and the Vermont Symphony. And in the regular course of my normal performing life, I am driving all over New England to play rehearsals and concerts. I also, sometimes get to travel around the country with a brass group that's based in Philadelphia that I play with. Many of us freelancers have careers like that, where, one week we're in Hanover, New Hampshire, and another week we're in Burlington, Vermont, and another week we're in Portland, Maine, and then another week we're in Hartford, Connecticut. Um, and it's it's a lot of fun when it's going well. Sometimes it's exhausting, but it feels very strange right now to be home all the time.
Well, being a freelancer, I guess you got to be versatile. I saw this clip of you doing a version of My Funny Valentine. It's not just an outlet for some inner Miles Davis. I mean, you got to be able to play different kinds of music with different kinds of people.
Yes, that's actually one of the hallmarks of a freelancer, is that we need to be able to adapt quickly. We need to be able to step into a different ensemble, sometimes a different genre of music. I do sometimes play in big bands with, people from the Berkeley faculty, and uh, you know, it's an exciting lifestyle, actually, to have that kind of variety.
Hazel, it's a bit like that with you as well. One of the clips that I came across, you played with a Far Cry about 3 years ago. They're mainly a string ensemble, but they do other kinds of music. Sometimes they need somebody to come in when they do the Benjamin Britten Serenade. They need a really good horn player to get that started. So talk about how important that is to be able to be ready to plug in.
Absolutely. Well, as Gabe said, as freelancers, we get called to play really in every group in New England. And, from calls to play Boston Pops, and then maybe 2 days later, you'll be playing the Britten Serenade. And then maybe the following week, you go on tour with somebody else. And so to have all of that ready at all times is a lot of work, but it's tremendously, gratifying. And playing with a Far Cry is one of my favorite groups to play with. They're just an unbelievable string ensemble, and to be a guest crier, as they call us, a wind player coming in and working in this conductorless ensemble, is really a unique and really special opportunity. And the Britten Serenade definitely goes down as one of my favorite performances ever.
Fewer gigs obviously mean less money all around, but I'm also curious about one other thing, is that when you have fewer performances, what does that do to the rhythm of practice? And you're concerned about, are you there? Do you still have the chops?
Oh man, yeah. So I mean, as a brass player, really as any instrumentalist, but I think especially brass, we cannot take a break. Like an athlete, like we have to maintain our skills every day, just to keep our chops, as you said. So this pandemic has created like a unique challenge. Usually, as Gabe mentioned, like we are playing every day, all over, and it's almost a given that we're in shape. So having no gigs, no concerts, it's just us in our practice rooms playing for our pets, and they're not very discerning. So to keep practicing and to maintain our own commitment to playing at our highest level is frankly quite challenging right now.
Gabriel, what's also challenging, whether you're a musician or anything else, is sometimes paying the rent, getting the food. What's going on with that with the people you're trying to help?
Well, Um, there's a range of experiences. We are seeing applicants for aid who are very young musicians who are just getting started, living in apartments in Alston or wherever, um, who don't necessarily have a lot of expenses, but also don't have a lot of income yet, and yet they also don't have years of savings built up. So they are seeing sometimes trouble, exactly as you suggest, paying the rent. We have certainly seen applicants who they're sending us mailing addresses from other parts of the country, but then showing us the work that they were doing in New England. It's because they've had to leave and go home to their families, because they can't continue to pay the rent. We also have applicants who are many more years into their careers. Um, some people who have retired before they plan to, and are trying to bridge to where they will be able to have some other income, um, and have, because they have been, they have higher expenses because they are paying mortgages and have kids to support. We've had applicants who have kids who started college last fall, and there's that big expense, and suddenly their performing income is pulled out from under them. So, we're trying to help make a dent in that. We can't solve the problems, but we can try to help make a dent.
Hey, so another way of putting this into perspective is that there are some organizations that the musicians play with, and it's really hard to imagine that those organizations are going to disappear a year from now, assuming that the pandemic comes to an end. But on the other hand, if you don't have this pool of what, 2,000 or so freelancers ready and available, what does that mean for their ability to sort of bounce back?
Yeah, I think that that is one reason that we're looking longer term. Like, I don't, even as people get vaccinated, the vibrant music scene that we had, a year ago, and for the decade or so before that, isn't just going to bounce back. Like Gabe said, many people have had to leave the area. Many people have had to search for jobs in at Whole Foods, or delivering Amazon packages just to get by. And until work picks up enough that they can feel safe to drop those part-time jobs, or those even full-time jobs outside of the industry, those musicians aren't going to be available to play in the groups that they used to play in. And many of these are these players that have had to temporarily, hopefully, leave the music industry. They're some of the best players, and they have mortgages to pay, though, and they can't just wait around for the work to come back. And so that is a real fear, that even if the orchestras and organizations can hang on, like, can the musicians hang on to be there to play for them?
I'm just going to go back to Gabriel. What about the effort so far? I mean, how much you've raised and how you've been able to get that? How has that been working out?
We have been honestly overwhelmed at the positive response from the music loving public. Once we were able to start really getting the word out and communicating effectively, what how musicians have been impacted by this pandemic. The people who love going to concerts and love listening to music have really responded much more generously than we even expected. Um, so we have been able to raise a little over $400,000. We have been able to uh, give aid grants to, I believe the current count is 325 musicians. Um, we are working towards a goal, we've identified March 13th as the day that things shut down. Um, uh, just as a date that we've identified that single date, but it was around that time. But we are trying to, we have a goal to get our total fundraising up to $500,000 and over by the anniversary of that date, by March 13th of this year. so that we can help, that many more musicians.
Hazel, is there a memory that stands out for you, what it was like when the music stopped?
Yes, actually. My story was similar to many of my colleagues, but the shutdown really hit me when I was in the middle of a rehearsal. So I was in the dress rehearsal for the Foray Requiem, and we were planning, 3 concerts coming up that weekend. And at the break, after we did a run through, and then we were going to have a break and then come back for some final rehearsal. And it was actually at the break that the music director of the chorus made the announcement that we would be canceling the concert and that they didn't feel it was safe to continue singing and playing in the same space. And they sent us home. And it was very surreal. I get goosebumps actually now just thinking about it, like packing up my horn on that day was March 10th. And I have not played in any rehearsal or performance since then.
What about you, Gabe? I hear you on the trombone and that heavy breathing. What about the end of that?
Yeah, I was, the last concert I played was on March 11th. I was a guest soloist with the UMass Amherst Symphony Orchestra, along with a couple of my colleagues. And the next day, the 12th, we were scheduled to do, I was scheduled to do a masterclass for the students at UMass Amherst. And we did that, but those students had just found out that morning that they were not going to be able to come back after spring break, which was the following week. So we all did our best to have a normal sort of teaching, learning experience, but they were really distracted. They were really, they were going to have to pack up their dorm rooms. They were going to have to, say goodbye to their friends for who knew how long. It was quite difficult. And then, the next day, Friday the 13th of March, I was in a meeting of the Boston Musicians Association board. I'm a member of the board of the BMA, and the New England Musicians Relief Fund came out of conversations that we had in the board of directors of the local union. How can we help our members? How can we help musicians? How can we help the music community? And during that meeting, that regularly scheduled meeting, we would look at our phones and look at our email every couple of minutes, say, oh, there goes another one canceled. There's another gig canceled. Here's another bunch of musicians out of work. And another member of the board and I stayed after the meeting to do research to find out what kinds of relief funds were available, because we saw that we were going to need that. And we saw that there wasn't much. So we realized we had to start it. And then I just want to throw in also, I want to make sure to say that even though this effort started out of the Musicians Union, it is not limited to union musicians. We decided very early on that we needed to look at all of New England, all the New England states, and we needed to make it for the entire musical community, union musicians or not. And that has proven to be really important. Many of our applicants are people who are not covered on, not traditionally covered under union contracts.
Right. And finally, we should mention, Hazel, if people want to get in contact with the fund, either to apply for a grant or to help, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, so we have a website. It is nemrf.org. That stands for New England Musicians Relief Fund. And nemrf.org. And you can apply and donate there.
Great. I'd like to thank you both very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much for having us and getting the word out.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Gabriel Langfur and Hazel Dean Davis from the New England Musicians Relief Fund.